Hello, hello, and welcome to the Hollywood Outsiders special WandaVision AfterHO. Get it? Like after show? Today and each week after, we will be talking all about WandaVision, one episode at a time, what it means for the show, and also what it could mean for the MCU. These will be in the feed every Monday after a new episode, but if you support us at patreon.com/The Hollywood Outsider, you will get early access by a few days. Now let's get on with the show. My name is Amanda Sink, and today I'm joined by my fellow ho, Aaron Peterson.
What's up? I had a vision that the show was not what I thought it was going to be. But continue.
Really?
A little bit.
And we have a special guest with us today who will be on all of the other episodes, Vinny Schwartz.
Howdy.
Howdy to you too, sir. I reckon this is going to be a good episode.
If your name's Vinny, you should go by Mr. Carter, but you probably don't get that joke.
Hey, will I look funny to you? Or like a clown funny, or?
Well, you got that one too. All right, I like that. That works.
Before we get into it, just keep in mind, this is full spoilers here. We're obviously talking about the first two episodes, and we're not holding anything back. So if you haven't watched them, I don't know why you would be listening to this, but if you're not familiar, WandaVision is a blend of classic television and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in which Wanda Maximoff and the Vision, two superpowered beings living idealized suburban lives, begin to suspect that everything is not as it seems. So again, in this episode, we're going to be talking both about episodes 1 and 2, since Disney Plus released them together. But before we get into that, I want to know what you guys knew coming into WandaVision. Were you fans of the two characters outside of the MCU films? Did you have any familiarity with them?
I mean, I know them from the films. Yeah, I do not know the comics that well, so I know that there is a huge Wanda Scarlet Witch history that I'm not very familiar with. I pretty much just know her from the movies, and I know that Elizabeth Olsen had a great accent that she lost really quick. And now she's very Americanized. I know that. And Vision is a robot. And he's dead. But he's not dead. He's here. So that's what I know.
So you're left in, like, confused land.
I mean, I think it's not what I thought it was going to be based on how the second episode ended. I really, up until then, I thought it was going to be all about Wanda basically created this thing. And now I'm thinking something else. But we'll get there. That's a long way ahead.
Vinny, what about you? Tell us about your experience with the comics. I know you have some familiarity with it. You're a big old nerd.
Yes, I am a self-proclaimed big old nerd.
You get that on a t-shirt? Can you get a tattoo with that?
Self-proclaimed big old nerd. But the extent was mostly from the films, like most other people, with a little bit of comic knowledge, mostly like House of M, which a lot of people are speculating that they're using as a basis for the story. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what they do use from that comic line, kind of dealing with a lot of how crazy her powers can get, which they haven't got into yet with the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
But,
not at all.
No, not at all. But yeah, other than that, they weren't really on my radar all that much. So I'll be as surprised as most other people.
What about you, man? I mean, you've been raving about this thing on the podcast since it was announced, and we're all just like, did you see what it looks? I mean, it looks weird. And you're like, oh, I can't wait. It's the best thing ever.
I mean, truly, I don't know if it was just that I was so excited because it's Scarlet Witch, and I feel like in the MCU, she had something to do, and yes, she was very powerful when you actually think about it. But in terms of her FaceTime and how she is in the comics, she is so underutilized in the MCU. And I don't think people understand the full potential of Scarlet Witch in general. And so to see her get a TV show where we really get to expand on hopefully the comics, which I think there's a couple of them that it's going to connect to. And I think some people are speculating on that as well. And we'll talk in a minute just a little bit about what those are. But I don't know. I'm excited that she gets an opportunity to have some FaceTime and people can learn to love the good and the bad of Scarlet Witch.
Good call. I just want to know, I hope they get to the root of the secret of what magic trick she used to get rid of that accent. because that's very important to me. Because it's just like one movie, it's very Scandinavian or whatever the hell that was. And the next movie is just like, I'm Scarlet Witch.
That's the magic of boardroom meetings. Like, so accent didn't go over well. Maybe don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bunch of guys in a room going, the Bonds, the big old nerds, they're tearing us apart about this. They are tearing us apart.
Well, just keep in mind, too, that I know it was ridiculous that it was like one movie and then it lessened a little bit in the next one and then it was like gone in the one after that. She did have to obviously at some point learn to blend in, but I wish they would have shown a little bit of that. And in the comics,
is that what we're selling it as? All right.
In the comics, her and Hawkeye have like some special time together where he helps train her in some ways. And we see a glimpse of that because he's next to her. But like maybe in those times, that's when he was like Vinny said, that accent is not really working.
Those fan goggles are great.
That's I know, great. Right?
You're just like, yeah, I'm like, because I'm watching it going, so this is a Halle Berry Storm moment. That's what we're doing. But I like Elizabeth Olsen a lot. I think she's great in the role.
So just to kind of briefly touch on the comics, the Vision is one of them that some people are contemplating whether it's tied to this or not. And the Vision is basically a world where, and I guess skip past this if you don't want to hear what the comics, like if you're just really not interested in hearing what it could be. The Vision is a set of comics that follows more so the Vision, obviously, and his new life. And he has an android wife and 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And as things start to unravel, and I'm not going to tell you what happens because it is bonkers crazy. It's so good, though. You find out that his love of Wanda has never gone away. And we actually find out that he created this wife of his with the same brain patterns or brain waves of Wanda after they split. And she did the same thing with what is known as Wonder Man. And so they kind of have each other, but without having each other. And so they have the ability to rebuild their lives of what they wanted, but it's so very broken. And Vinny, do you want to talk a little bit about House of M and what you know of it?
Yeah, the House of M actually takes place a little bit after what's known as M Day. I'm not sure what comic book that's in. I'm not going to get into, actually comic book guy territory, but House of M deals with Wanda basically creating a utopia for everyone so that she can have her own little piece in her corner of the world. But some of the heroes realize that everything's not as it should be. And of course, they work to unravel that. And all she really wants is to have her own family away from everyone without having to deal with persecution. But unfortunately, utopia for everyone isn't always utopia for everyone. So, of course, that has to come to an end.
And one of the crazy things about House of M is she wanted to have kids with Vision, and obviously they couldn't have kids together. And so she created her own twins. And then with this world, she lost it.
Which could possibly actually, it's slightly hinted at the end of the second episode, how
slightly.
This is happening.
There's a big old baby bump, brother.
Well,
all that was missing was her taking out an EPT going, oh, look, it's a plus.
Well, a couple of characters are kind of hinted at. And while I was doing a little bit of trying to do some research on the comics, I found a fan theory on one character, and it kind of makes sense, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Ooh, excellent.
So she's kind of a character she's really, really smart and powerful, and she has all of this chaos magic that she can use and hexes and different stuff. But she is also in some ways a little bit mentally unstable, just because when she loses the things she cares most about, i.e. these kids that she made, everything starts to crumble down for her. And actually, once they start to reverse the false realities that she had created, the utopias that Vinny was referring to, she is so powerful that some of the effects linger and actually creates effects in reality. So it'll be really interesting to see how they blend between multiple comics. I know that they've said that it's going to come from more than one comic and that they're leaning into those, but they are also creating their own story with it. So we don't have any 100% idea that none of this fully aligns with the comics, and none of them that I know of take place in this television world.
Revisionist sitcom world.
Yeah, which is something we'll talk a little bit about too. So what the hex is going on? And I'm very proud of that. I think it's so punny.
You should. It's so punny.
We're going to discuss our overall thoughts on the episode, key characters, and dissect the plot points, the really big ones that stood out to us, to figure out what the hex is going on. And so the first episode that we take a look at, which is literally titled Episode 1, in that episode, we see Wanda and Vision living their happiest lives, trying to fit in with the regular world. Wanda and Vision forget what the heart on the calendar means, but as Vision goes to work, he's reminded of the dinner date that they set with his boss, Mr. Hart. And Wanda at home meets her neighbor Agnes, and the two prepare for what Wanda believes must be an anniversary celebration. So chaos ensues when Mr. and Mrs. Hart, played by Fred Melamed and Deborah Jo Rupp, arrive at a candlelit home with Wanda scrambling to make food, feeling very Bewitched and I Love Jeannie, kind of Dick Van Dyke, all of these different shows. What'd you think, Aaron, of this opening episode and the theme that ties back to these old shows that we Americans used to love?
Yeah, I feel like Bewitched was coming next. I feel like this is really Dick Van Dyke-ish, Leave It to Beaver almost, but really Dick Van Dyke in terms of the style. And I dug the revisionist sitcom nature of it because we're just talking about episode 1. So I have a complaint about that in episode 2. But episode 1, I really dug it. I thought it was fun. And because I'm someone who's very familiar with those sitcoms, I grew up on them as a kid, just rewatching the reruns and whatnot. They nailed it. Like, they nailed the tone. Elizabeth Olsen was fantastic in terms of how she actually recreated that whole 50s housewife motif. Like, she did a fantastic job with that. I was really, really impressed. Yeah, and Catherine Hahn is great and everything. So
they kind of modernized the women, though, in a way, too, because they weren't.
A bit.
Yeah, I feel like the things that wouldn't necessarily play really well today, they were more so joked about on the show, where it's like, oh, yes, and you always want to please the husband, ha, ha, ha. But they didn't seem to necessarily act that way, especially Catherine Hahn's character, Agnes. She did
a really good, like, her. I mean, if you really grew up on those or you know those sitcoms well, Catherine Hahn, I think Elizabeth Olsen was better. Like, she was just really fantastic in that role. Like, she really nailed it. But Catherine Hahn nailed that whole ridiculously over the top neighbor that was in, or friend that was in every sitcom. I thought she was just a delight.
Vinny, what'd you think of this first episode and the sitcom theme?
I mean, Aaron pretty much nailed it. It was great. It was charming. Like, just the little bit of jokes here and there. It's already smiling because I did watch these shows, despite my age as a kid. It was mostly at Nick at Night. So, you know, you still had I Love Lucy and Bewitched and stuff like that. So
I Love Lucy.
I did watch those shows. And they really nailed the tone and the delivery for the jokes. It was really well done. But towards the end, it really kind of overstayed its welcome for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, it was charming and fun at the beginning, and it kept going and going. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, they're doing this for the whole episode. I didn't realize.
Oh, so you were done with it even in episode 1?
Towards the end, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, probably just going off of the trailer, I thought we'd get that quote-unquote color skip a little bit sooner. And so by the time we got to the end of the episode, I was like, oh, wow, that took a bit longer than I thought it would.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't have that until the second episode, but once we get to the episode 2, I do have some things.
Well, let's first start. We talked a little bit about Wanda and Elizabeth Olsen's portrayal, but let's talk more about her character. What do you think of the powers that you saw her using and the way that she used them? Aaron, you already alluded to how much you loved Elizabeth Olsen's performance, which was amazing. But any additional thoughts that you had about her character or Elizabeth Olsen's performance?
Well, one, go on the record, she's the coolest Olsen. Sorry.
She is.
Sorry, Mary-Kate and Ashley. You lost. You should have stopped doing all those clothes. And to the lobster door knocker, I really laughed out loud. I thought that was very clever. But no, I dug how she utilized her power. Actually, how both of them are utilizing her powers, and he's constantly doing like robot jokes with his coworkers that they don't get, but we do. Haha. And yeah. I mean, the powers worked. And I think it was important because I, as a Marvel fan, was really struggling like throughout the episodes. Like, okay, I'm tuning in for a Marvel show. I get they're going for something different. On the same token, I already watched enough sitcoms to be content with that. I don't need more. I need something in this. And then you get some powers near the midsection, really, where she's flying all the dishes around and everything else. And that felt like, okay, all right.
I really liked that moment because you saw a glimpse into how her mental instability, like she was really flustered and trying to figure things out. And you could see everything else turning into a chaotic mess. All of the pots and pans and things were just starting to become very messy. And so that really was a great way to show how intense her powers are and how connected they are to her emotions. I loved that. Vinny, what about you for Wanda? What'd you think of her as a character and Elizabeth Olsen's portrayal?
Again, Elizabeth Olsen did fantastic. She could have definitely had the same role back then, doing the same kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Catherine Hahn. Even during the episode, I said she needs to be in more things. Every time I see her in anything, she just does fantastic.
You guys are really raving about her. We'll hop over back to Vision after, but what is it that you love about her?
About Elizabeth Olsen?
Yeah. Talk a little bit why you love her so much.
It's actually not like I liked her as Scarlet Witch. I loved her in this. I don't know what it is, but it's how she perfectly captures that moment of time. Like I really feel like she is what she was transposed from those 50s sitcoms. She's Mary Tyler Moore transposed to now, and I just thought that was magical. She even does a thing with her voice where it's just like Mary Tyler Moore sounded in a way. It's, she changes it a little bit. She tweaks it. It's stern, but also giddy, but also a little innocent at the same time. I mean, it's a nice little concoction she worked up with her voice, and her actions as well really just mimic that era. Like she just perfectly captured the era.
So you're saying the opposite of that accent she had?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. She totally, she wiped that Halle Berry stank off it. So completely. She did great. Yep.
I totally meant Catherine Hahn, why you guys were obsessed with her, because you guys were raving on about her, but I appreciate that you took another moment to rave about Elizabeth Olsen.
I mean, she's just really funny, and just like she just chews up lines in everything she's in. Like,
Catherine Hahn?
Yeah, like I can't think of a single thing she's been in that I didn't love her in. Like she was in a movie called The Lot or something, where it was about car sales, and like overall the movie's pretty forgettable, but she was fantastic in it.
And she adds a levity to the show too, because of who she is.
She also has the undercurrent of, she's being innocent and funny, but she's also like naughty. You can tell she's a neighbor that is probably in some bondage. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about her.
Well, she's actually that possible secret character I was talking about earlier.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, we'll go into that. What's the secret character of her?
So the fan theory and thinking about it, I could buy it, is that she actually is a character from the comics known as Agatha Harkness.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So when Scarlet Witch started out, she just kind of had generic hex powers, because that was back when she was more of a background character. She wasn't really... most female comic book characters weren't really given the proper service that they were deserved. They were just kind of like set pieces, because comic book readers were perceived as mostly men. So not really a whole lot of great comic book females, unfortunately. But eventually she did get her own powers, and they weren't just generic hex powers. She eventually did also learn to use what was called chaos magic. And she learned this from an Agatha Harkness, who is, quote unquote, married to Mephisto, which is like Marvel's devil.
Which they did make she did make a comment too, and I can't remember if it was episode 1 or 2, but she did make a comment. It was episode 2 for sure.
Yeah, she's made a whole lot of comments about how awful her husband is.
Yeah.
And even at
Ralph.
one point, I was like, okay, I get it. He sucks, man. Like, geez. But after thinking about all that and who she could possibly be, she even had, see, I'm such a nerd. I look for all these little details. She has a brooch on that matches the one that Agatha Harkness has in the comics. And like that's got to be something, right?
Yeah, I would say.
I looked it up and it's pretty similar. So,
You know, I didn't even pick up on that. And she is like her mentor. Like there is a period, I think it's in the 2015 line of Scarlet Witch where she's no longer alive at that point, but she's like always with Scarlet Witch. She's with Wanda. They kind of do journeys together and solve crimes together in a way too. So it's kind of like her best friend at the same time. What?
The Hardy Boys via Scarlet Witch and Agnes.
More like the Hardy Boys, but with more witchcraft.
So let's talk a little bit about the Vision, played by Paul Bettany. He's still kind of a charming android. He has a great chemistry with Wanda. You can tell that he has emotions for her, that he feels so strongly and intensely for her, and that he's really trying to fit into this appear normal in this world alongside her. And it seems like that's kind of where she was hoping for them to lie. But what'd you think about his performance and some of his jokes and things like that in the first episode?
He was good, but I did feel like I really like Paul Bettany as an actor. I feel like he was trying too hard in scenes. And maybe it's because that's the character, but there were a couple scenes where I thought it was a little forced for me. And so I didn't love him as much as I did her. Like, I just felt like she nailed it and he did a very fine job. You know what I mean? But I do like the subtle digs that they had. I liked some of the robot references because a couple of them I missed, and then I'm like, oh, I'm so stupid. So that's, some of those were very clever. I mean, I did enjoy him. I'm not trying to like deride him or anything. I'm just saying he did not blow me away or anything because there were a couple moments where I'm like, he's trying to put a nail into a hole that he doesn't normally fit.
I can see that. I mean, next to Elizabeth Olsen, it was hard for him to reach her level because she was just so damn charming. And she really I think you talked about pretty in depth already, how she was the epitome of those sitcoms. And I didn't feel that so much from him. I really felt it mostly from her.
Yep. But it's nothing, like I said, I don't think it was bad. What about you, Vinny? Did you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I was just going to say he did a good job of being, the bumbling but charming early sitcom husband. But compared to Elizabeth Olsen's fantastic job of doing the same kind of role from that era, it just doesn't stack up right. So I'm sure on his own, he may have looked a little more impressive, but then you have her and she's just nailing it. So she's bringing an A+, he brought a solid A, and you're like, I guess that's good enough.
I admire your generosity. I'd be a little lower on that one.
Well, now that we've talked about our three main characters that we see in this, obviously we have some side characters. We won't really touch on them so much. We'll talk about the really important plot points, the things that stood out to us aside from the story of the episode. So the first one is they have this commercial with the Toastmate 2000 from Stark Industries. And do you guys want to talk a little bit about what your reaction to seeing that commercial was?
That was cool. It's like Grindhouse, man, where you're just getting like fake commercials in the middle of your show. And it's just like, it's right from the time. I dig it. And Stark Industries at the end is like, and then there's Hydra in the next one. It's like, So yeah, those were fun fan moments. I thought it was great.
Well, for those who were listening or have to listen with their TV all the way up because they live with someone who's deaf, the startup for the toaster is the same startup noise for Iron Man's plasma cannons. It's the same little like whining wind up. I was like, that can't be coincidence, right? And then the Stark Industries thing comes up and has that really unsettling like moment where it just hangs and they both kind of stare at you. And then the light started actually glowing red. I was like, oh, that's weird. I don't know how I feel about this. So stuff like that makes me wonder, because again, there's something later that makes me think otherwise, but wonder if this is all a creation from Wanda and these are things that she's made from her life, or if this is something else that she's in.
Yeah, I initially thought, going into it, that's what I just assumed it was based on the trailers and stuff. I'm like, well, Wanda had to create this world, and just basically because she couldn't handle that he died in Infinity War. And that's what all this is about. But as we go on, I'm thinking other things, which is cool. I like to be surprised by something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure how exactly this is going to connect together, because I don't know if in the MCU world, the history that Wanda has with Stark because of what he did to her family, I just don't know if this is, again, just something from her memory, like it's tying back to her memory of Stark, and so it's just something to pull from that, or if there's actual real importance from it, if it's representing something.
We're going to find out.
Sure will. So the next plot point is about that dinner party moment where they kind of get shook a little bit when their guests, Mr. and Mrs. Hart, start asking them about where they moved from and why they don't have children yet. And they both get very fumbled, and he ends up choking on like a strawberry that Vision has to save him from. But do you think that this has significance aside from the obvious where it's an emotional thing for her because of children? I think we're all picking up on that, right?
Yeah, I think that was a realization moment, right? She's noticing, or she's the asking about the children and why you moved here, like that just triggered her, and that's why I think she's probably being held captive or something, something along those lines, because it really just shook her out of her delusion for a minute. And I just got to say, this 2 episodes in a row where somebody's pulling something out of somebody's mouth, I don't like that. So let's try to cut that part out, because that's gross.
Fair enough. Vinny, do you have any thoughts on this dinner party fiasco?
I'm not really sure. Again, it goes back to if this is something she's made or something that someone is keeping her in for whatever reason. It's almost like when a program doesn't know how to deal with some hiccup in its code, because the wife just keeps repeating over and over and over. And she starts to get a little more manic, but she doesn't do anything. She doesn't really change her overall demeanor. She's just sitting there saying the same thing while her husband's choking to death.
Yeah.
And eventually Wanda has to tell Vision, save him. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what to make of it, but definitely going to be watching out for the boss and his wife.
That, to me, when she directed Vision to do something, that made me feel like she has ultimate control over what's going on here. Whether she's been forced into some alternate reality that she's dealing with, or, she's created it in her mind willingly. I just have this feeling, and I know that second episode maybe shifts some things for us because of what happens, and we'll talk about it. But for sure in this episode, I'm feeling like she has ultimate control, because Vision as a character, he's like one of the ultimate Avengers. He's not going to just let somebody die who's just sitting right next to him. But on the other hand, I know they're trying to settle into a normal world and pretend like their powers don't exist around other regular humans. So maybe she was directive so that way he would just do it. But I just don't I feel like it's so out of character, and I don't know his character well enough, but I do know that he is always about good, doing the good thing. It's like outside of his code to do the wrong thing. And so to sit by and watch someone die until he's told to do it makes it seem really bizarre to me.
Well, on the other side, I mean, he's dead already. So everything you see of him is like a fiction of her imagination, or someone's imagination.
She could have brought him back, realistically.
I don't think she could.
She has the powers. She is.
I don't know that section of it. So.
But I mean, that doesn't mean that he wouldn't be this. He wouldn't necessarily be like the same him. But she could really mess some stuff up and try to bring him back. But that's all, assumptions and ideas of what it could be. Obviously, I don't think that that's the case. I think it's either some recreation, like in The Vision, where they create something similar to him and he creates something similar to her, or it's just, like figment of her imagination. So
I hope so. I'm a big fan of stakes. And if you kill major characters in a movie and they come right back, I don't like that. I mean,
like
they already have Black Widow died and then she gets a movie. Like, what? I mean, I get it. It comes before then. Yeah, but you killed her. I mean, and you're just like, see, it's not so bad. We got a movie. I don't like no stakes. I don't like that.
At first, I thought you meant like food. And I was like, oh.
No, I love
What's wrong with
steaks.
steak? What'd steak ever do to you? Moo. So the last important plot point that at least I took away, maybe you guys have some more, but there is at the very end, it's like their TV show. What we're watching is in someone else's TV. And then we see a sword logo encased in a circle, likely a reference to sword, which is also the Sentient World Observation Response Department. And also, just so you know, Kevin Feige did make an announcement that sword has a different meaning in the MCU than it does in the comics, and the W stands for weapon, not world. So I don't know much about sword. Vinny, I know you know a little bit more about it. Do you want to talk about what you do know from sword and how it might connect to this?
I mean, again, very passing knowledge. It wasn't really something I was super interested in. Did a little bit of extra just because I saw the logo. I'm like, oh, that's definitely a thing. So yeah, most likely points to sword, which is basically the extraterrestrial arm or counterpart to SHIELD, which if you saw the latest Spider-Man, you know that Fury is actually in space working to set up kind of like an outpost out there. So seeing how that could all tie together and what sword has to do with not only Wanda, but the rest of the MCU at this point will be really interesting.
Oh, aliens.
Because another thing I forgot, notable members of SWORD have been some mutants like Beast and Magneto.
Oh, yeah.
So they could probably try to work in some way to get those guys in now, which I'm excited for.
Well, in the history of Scarlet Witch is that she was actually Magneto's kid.
Right. But I just mean with this show apparently also tying into the Doctor Strange movie, which has to do with the multiverse somehow. They could go nuts with this. I'm excited.
Well, and they could make Magneto her dad now because they've got the rights back.
Right.
So they don't have to play that whole game where they can't say it. Now they can actually say it. Magneto's her pops.
Right. Actually, they actually changed her parentage and powers, or where she got her powers from, because of a rights dispute between Fox and Marvel. Because at the time, Marvel didn't have the rights. Well, I'm not sure exactly how it shook out, but basically Fox is like, well, you can't really use mutants all willy-nilly like that. So like, fine, we're not going to make X-Men comics. Scarlet Witch is going to be science enhanced and her dad's some random dude.
Now they can retcon it because Marvel.
Right.
So with this end situation of the show we are watching, WandaVision, being on someone else's TV that we are now watching, and we have no idea who it is, but assumedly somebody from this SWORD organization, what do you make of this TV thing? Like the TV show atmosphere inside an actual TV?
It's a happy place. For whatever I firmly believe someone is, by the end of this one, and especially by the end of the second one, I got the vibe that someone is holding her there, and they're trying to keep her complacent by, here you're with your favorite man, you're going to get the world you always wanted, this is a happy medium, you get to live this perfect life, because the 50s sitcom, 50s, 60s roughly, was this idyllic world where everyone had the perfect life, the perfect marriage, perfect kids, perfect neighborhood, perfect job, perfect everything. And really the biggest problem you had was my boss is coming to dinner and I got to make a bad meal. That's really what I'm getting from it at this point thus far.
Yeah, no, I like that theory.
I like it too. The only thing, it's just weird that they would go with that for her, being that she's supposed to be someone from like an Eastern Bloc, like not necessarily poorer, but like more rural, not super, they're not going to have I Love Lucy over there in whatever Sokovia is supposed to be.
They might have only had reruns of old shows there. They might, because they didn't have cable or fancy channels.
Yeah, I guess that's true too.
It's possible.
But yeah, it's leaning a little bit more towards like they're keeping her in some kind of simulation but she still manages to have a modicum of control over what goes on around her. So I'm not sure exactly what this is, if it's a computer sim, if it's like someone's powers, or what's going on there.
So what are your overall thoughts and impressions of this first episode before we move on to the second?
Good, intriguing, and boy, I sure hope they get rid of this 50s sitcom aesthetic for the next episode.
Boy, were you disappointed.
I sure was, and we're getting there.
Vinny, what were your overall thoughts and reactions?
I mean, you got it earlier. It's just I got over the shtick a little quicker than most people probably would have, but overall, it was still charming. I enjoyed it, but again, it's a Marvel show, and I know that in the back of my mind. So I'm like, get to Marvel stuff. Come on.
Yeah, I'm the one thing that I will say, because I really liked it. Elizabeth Olsen, and I did like Paul Bettany. I do think he wasn't up to her standard, but I think she was just off the charts, her and Catherine Hahn. It was a great introductory episode, but I am really glad that they released the first two, because I don't know, for a week-to-week show, I don't know that I would have been somebody who's not invested in Scarlet Witch and been like, oh, let me go back to this next week. You know what I mean?
No,
Without that.
I would have quit.
Yeah.
I would have quit. If you would have had, I'm telling you right now, I'm like being completely honest. If I watched the first episode and then I waited for, because I would definitely come back after the first episode, but I came back and I got a full another episode of basically the same thing, I wouldn't have come back for number 3. By putting them together, at least I'm like, okay, I watched them basically as 1 hour,
right.
Is what I did. And okay, one episode that works, but you split them apart and you get them a week apart, and I just know me, I wouldn't come back.
Fair enough. So let's transition into our second episode. Welcome to Westview. Wanda and Vision are participating in the talent show fundraiser for the children. Wanda meets some friends or foes, while Vision meets up with the guys and gets all gummed up, leaving Wanda to cover up his mess. If you guys want to talk a little bit about how crazy, I thought it was really funny, but basically he gets drunk because his gears aren't working right with the gum sticking it up.
I thought that was clever, actually.
It was so funny.
Yeah, I thought
that's
clever.
why you don't swallow gum, kids.
But I thought it was nice.
I dug it, and especially I really dug the for the children part, and how it, at first I thought that was just a really goofy talent show thing, and then at the very end you're like, oh, that's a kind of a cool connection. Yeah, it sounds more ominous at the end of the episode compared to
chanting it
when
like
you
a
first
large
hear.
cult. Yeah, very ominous.
Yes, exactly.
I was like, no,
Exactly.
no more for the children of the corn, apparently.
So I liked it. And Elizabeth Olsen looked really nice in that outfit, and that was okay.
She
really wanted it that in color. I'm telling you right now, that was a real bummer in black and white.
I don't know that she could look bad in any outfit, to be fair.
Yeah, that's to be fair, but in black and white, it's not in color. So that was the most obvious thing you could ever say, but I said it.
Yes, you did. So there's two characters that are prominent that we meet. The first one is Geraldine, played by Tiana Paris. Now, because they did an announcement already about who she is, she's actually Monica from Captain Marvel, but all grown up. So she was the little girl.
That's cool.
They don't tell you that in this episode, but they made the casting announcement with her being that character. So I think it's kind of important that you recognize that when you see her and tie it back and you're like, oh, that's who she's supposed to be. And that's why she had a little bit of hesitation when she said what her name was.
That's interesting. So this could be either in the future, or it could just be part of the assimilation or part of the...
Well, Captain Marvel took place
trick.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
So
she's about... Never mind.
She'd be
You're
about
right.
that age now.
Never mind. I forgot. Because that movie's so damn forgettable. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, not a fan.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. She definitely... Whatever's going on in this world, whatever it is, she definitely knows that... It's kind of like any other thing where there's a simulation and then there's real characters and then there's NPCs. She's definitely a character that knows that something's up and she's trying to like feel out the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So whether she works with SWORD or some other organization, she's definitely like she has agency in there, and she's trying to figure out what's going on and what's going on with Wanda.
I liked her character just in general, too. Like, aside from what she could be and who she's supposed to become or already is. I thought she was just a really sweet character. And at the end when she's like, oh, I just was back here and all of a sudden I ended in a box. How'd you make that happen? And, you know, her and Wanda have some cute chemistry. I think they could be really good friends. Like her, Wanda, and Catherine Hahn's Agnes, if they were all just like BFFs. I would like that.
Yeah, I liked her a lot. So I hope, well, obviously she will be back.
Yeah. And the other character that we meet is Dottie, played by Buffy's Emma Caulfield. I was so excited to see her.
Yeah, that was fun.
She is the town's snobbiest clique leader. I was not prepared for who she could be because I really only know Emma from Buffy when she played Anya. So I saw her as such a mean girl, being a demon.
She's basically like playing Anya in this. I mean, to a degree.
She is, but I just kind of like being the leader, I guess, is the part where I was like, oh, she's like a snobby leader. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess I can see the parallels.
Yeah, I think she's very similar. And it was nice to see her in something. I haven't seen her in anything in so long.
Yeah.
She's always wonderful to see, though. Love her.
And we'll come back to a moment with her because there's some plot points ahead that include her. So the first one is there's this thudding sound that keeps happening. And in the beginning, they chalk it up to this tree. And then they find this little mini plane that's in color in the bushes. Aaron, what say you?
I have no idea. I just know I'm like, wait, is this like Schindler's List? Does this mean where are we? I don't know what's going on. You know, I just felt so weird to see this thing plainly in color, and apparently Agnes doesn't even say anything about it. Like she didn't, like you don't see that's in color.
Wasn't that weird?
Yeah, it's weird. So that's why I think Agnes is totally in. I think Vinny's right on this one. But no, I have no idea what that meant or means, and I had a little bit of a Lost flashback. I don't know why I didn't like that part, but otherwise it was really cool. It was cool because it made my mind go crazy.
Yeah, I thought, and even the color scheme, it closely resembles Iron Man's color scheme. I don't know if that's on purpose or what the deal is, but again, she turns it over and there's that same sword logo. So
maybe that's occurring in her actual reality, and that's how it got transferred into this, whatever this is.
Her subconscious saw it somewhere.
Pulling it in and recognizing
All I know is the reveal for whatever's happening better be ridiculously just fantastic, because it needs to be after all this.
All of this theorizing.
All this theorizing, crafting, just all the stuff that they're sticking in. I just hope it's not one of those things where the fans come up with better theories than they write, which I don't think would happen, but, you know.
But it's happened before.
Right.
Sure, yeah. I'll be very interested to know where it's going, and hopefully they get a better feel for when one of their gimmicks is going on a little too long. Even though I dig magic tricks, and that whole drunken, her covering Vision's drunkenness was pretty fun, I still thought I would have rather been in a different format by this point.
I didn't mind it so much, but I think I was just so entranced with everything else going on that I just kind of set that to the side. But I do agree I'm ready to be in a different time, platform, etc., which we do see towards the end. So
sure, absolutely.
Coming back to Dottie in a moment between her and Wanda, they're talking and Wanda's helping her clean up or being forced to clean up. And a voice breaks through over the radio asking Wanda who is doing this to her. And Dottie ends up breaking her glass, or Wanda does, and we see her blood, which is in color. So there's some really strange things happening here, but what do you think? Who do you think the radio person could be?
I was trying to figure that out, and I was just listening over and over, and I don't know, no one really jumps out to me.
So it's not a voice you recognize?
No, I mean, I'm sure it's a character that's been in the MCU already, and those who, I don't know, I guess pay more attention than I do, have already figured it out, but I'm sure it'll be some side character or some character from, like, I don't know, something that I just didn't really pay attention to, like one of the first two Thor movies or like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something.
I got the vibe it was like someone almost kind of broke into a transmission somehow, like got word to her, maybe telepathically, not through radio necessarily, but through telepathically, or something got into her head because they see that she's trapped somewhere in something, and they're asking a legitimate question like, who is doing it? Like, they're trying to
help her.
I have no idea who. Yeah, they're trying to help her. That's the vibe I got.
Yeah.
Which this is also the thing that made me realize, like, oh, maybe she's not making this all happen, even though she has strong enough powers to create things out of thin air, to make things float, to change her outfit. But maybe she's actually in some kind of simulation.
Same here. That's what I got. I mean, that's really when I started thinking, okay, now you got me, because you were losing me a little bit with the whole black and white thing going on. But that happened, and it really brought me back. Like, I got really excited for that.
Yeah, that moment really changed things for me in terms of my theories and what I thought was going on, because it's now becoming more apparent that it wasn't necessarily her willful doing or intentional doing, but that somebody is obviously doing this to her, and they keep repeating that. So it's obviously important because they reiterate that message at the very end of the episode again.
Oh, and what else is interesting is when moments like this happen, like this, and when when the thudding happens just before she goes out to find the helicopter, the camera style changes. It goes from like that normal, just static pain like they would have with those old school shows to more modern takes. I don't know how to properly describe it, and not that huge of a movie buff, but I did notice that when she was like kind of cleaning house and all of a sudden she heard the knocking, I noticed that the camera, like the cinematography style changed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, very astute.
Yeah. And our next plot point, the Strucker Hydra watch commercial. And this is obviously significant because in the MCU world, this is who essentially gave the powers to the twins.
Yeah, Baron Strucker.
Yeah, that dude.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
So I'm just too stupid.
That's where the Bond comes in. By the way, you should totally trademark that. Big ol' nerd.
Bond. Big ol' nerd.
But yeah, I noticed that, and then, of course, the Hydra logo. So again, it goes back to these are just maybe things supplanted from her subconscious to kind of fill in gaps or something.
Yeah, it's obviously important to her that it would be introduced in here, and they're trying to help you understand. But I don't understand. Here's the thing. I don't understand why they think we don't already know this. So it feels like there has to be a higher level of significance to these commercials introducing these companies, Stark and Hydra, because
I will tell you what, when you have a show that's trying this hard to be subtle and also like have things that are underlying that fans will pick up on, and it'll all come together at the end, it usually works so that you can go back and rewatch it with a completely different appreciation for it, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I hope that that's what happens. I have faith in them, but I do agree with Vinny that it does worry me. There's so many different avenues that they could go with. I just hope they chose the right one, you know?
Mm-hmm. Me too. Really, me too.
Yeah.
I mean, comic book multiverses, you can do literally whatever you want.
But even this is a stretch for whatever I want, because I don't recall ever wanting this.
I'll say I don't think this is necessarily whatever you want, but I mean, you know, further down the line, like, well, we're down at Captain America and Iron Man. Let's just pluck them from a different universe so we can keep making merchandise.
I'm just saying, you're creating a show and it's a fantasy world where Wanda's in it. I have a completely different idea of how every episode is.
Oh my God. We're with you. So the next plot point is Wanda being pregnant, and then that thudding starts up again. When her and Vision go outside to investigate, there's a bee man who comes out of the sewer. Wanda literally nopes this situation. Rewinds.
Yeah.
No. Like, no, I don't think we'll be doing this.
Yeah, no. Rewinds back to that pregnancy moment from a few seconds ago, and then everything turns to color. So we are officially out of the black and white world. We are probably into the 70s now.
Woo! Sorry, I'm just diluting the color change.
Because they are doing different decades, if you weren't familiar with that already. So they're
wasn't familiar because it was just the one decade for 2 episodes. So, you know.
Well, doesn't Doesn't Bewitched come into the 60s?
Yeah, Bewitched the 60s, sure.
And wasn't
But
Dick
that's in
Van Dyke
color.
the 50s?
Yeah.
So we
but
did
two
episode
episodes.
1 was
I'm
50,
saying
then 60.
let's do it faster.
Next one's
Little quick.
70s.
Little quick.
But it's bizarre, this B-Man. So all of it to me, I can understand. I'm vibing with. I get it. But this B-Man and the sheer horror that came with it, that element of horror, I thought was magnificent. It was exactly what I needed to really like jolt me back into the show. But I don't understand it. I don't understand this connection.
Yeah, you don't know what the buzz is about.
Oh my God. Have you been waiting to use that?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to stop talking.
Oh.
Yep.
I just want to backtrack a little bit and ask, does this mean we're going to get an episode that's like 90s era, like really cheesy, just overly dramatic, like Dawson's Creek style episode?
Well, I think they're sticking to, if they stick to sitcoms, it'll be like Friends, won't it? Or Seinfeld or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Oh, well, then I don't want to see
Well,
that.
hopefully not Seinfeld. Oh, please not.
Sorry,
I don't
Friends
want to
fans.
see that.
But that show's not that good.
Come on, see the Vision come on and be like, how you doing?
That'd be funny. So yeah, I don't really know what that has to do with any of this, but it's obviously important, and I like that they introduced a level of fear and tension to the show, because it's not. We knew that everything was not
And weird.
happy, yes, but now it's like grim and dark
And weird.
and very
That
weird.
was like so Twin Peaksy to me. I'm like, what? What is a B-Man coming out of the sewer? What?
Again, like, I'm sure there's some Marvel supervillain, I use supervillain loosely, that is like the Bee Master or something, but I didn't bother looking into that because I'm like, whatever. But he, again, had that sword logo on his back at the very least. So, again, another thing that's tied to sword. So it's either they have her in the simulation or they're trying to get her out. So it'll be interesting to see what side they fall on.
and what they
Yeah,
want
'cause
her
it-
for.
Right.
Or
It
to
could be they
prevent
were
her from-
trying to break her out, but she doesn't want to leave this
Right.
fantasy
True,
life.
yeah.
That's possible.
It
That is possible
absolutely is.
because here Vision's still alive. Out there, he's not.
And she has
And
her
she
children.
Babies. She has babies coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing leads back to Agatha, because the way that she actually conceives those children is with essence of Mephisto.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole thing. I don't remember the exact story, but basically they're born, they get superpowers. Mephisto tries to take them. They beat Mephisto. Happy ending, kind of.
Yeah, Agatha
Fingers
has
crossed.
a lot of crazy power to her. So if Catherine Hahn becomes this powerful witch, it's going to be really cool.
I'd love to see it. I'm here
That would
for
be
it.
so. She's so cheeky. I think that would be hilarious.
And honestly, Agatha had a level of that, like comedic element to her. So it could definitely work, and it wouldn't be too far of a stretch or anything. So now that we have concluded the first and the second episode, we are out of black and white. We're into color. How are you feeling about what is to come of this next episode and the rest of the show? Are you guys still keeping on board with it?
I mean, yeah, that.
Well, you're obligated because you're doing the podcast. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not going to be here every week.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
here when I'm here.
I mean, I could fake it.
fake it till you make it.
No, but they definitely pulled me back in. At first, it kind of seemed like something that would be like, man, I don't know if I stopped watching it at any point. Like, there's just some shows where I'll be watching them for a while and then I just stop for whatever reason. And I never go back to it. And a year later, I'm like, oh yeah, I never finished that show. At first, it kind of seemed like that, but they got enough in there to keep me interested. So it'll be, like I said, it'll just be really interesting to see where it goes from here.
Aaron, was there a specific moment that kept your intrigue in the second episode?
A specific moment that kept my intrigue. Well, yeah, the very end was great. I really loved the whole rewind, and she's changed the color palette.
The radio
and then we get
again.
the reveal again, and then who's doing this to you, or who's doing this to you. I really dug that. It's just honestly, it's because of how they release the episodes. Because I'm telling you, I don't know what it is. It's probably because there's so much content now. But if I had a week break, I really don't think I would have come back for a third episode. But because they put these together, it really changed how I absorbed the show. And Because the sad part is I really dug if this was a 50s sitcom, I would have loved this episode.
Yeah.
Because I really dug the whole like magic show and stuff, and especially how she was covering up for Vision's, using his powers in front of everyone, and she's trying to mask it. I thought that was really clever. And part of me is like, well, if it's a sitcom, why does she need to mask it? Is there a reason? What? Because it's all fake, obviously. So what? But I will say at the end of this episode, I really had well, there's nothing like this on TV. So I'm intrigued because there's nothing like this on TV right now.
Well, and so, I feel like fans have a little bit of an obligation to at least follow the story because we know that it connects to the MCU. Like they've already...
I don't have that at all. I don't. If something sucks, I'm out. I am just not... Marvel does not get like pity watching from me. There's too much stuff I can watch. I don't do it for anyone. So, nope.
You would probably just like read a recap and then watch the movies to try to keep up with it. Yeah.
Well, would I spend not 9 hours because these are shorter episodes, but why would I spend 5 hours of my time on something that I didn't enjoy? Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, no.
Marvel fans have to watch this?
Yeah. I feel like there's a level of it where you kind of, if you're a devoted enough Marvel fan and you're one of those people, then you're probably going to want to keep up with it and at least understand all of the nuances when the next movies come out and how it correlates and ties into. So before I get into that, let's move on to The Vision, which is another clever pun. This is what we see going forward and how it connects to the MCU. It is, Aaron. We kind of talked already about where we think this story is headed right now, but maybe share a little bit, Aaron, about what you think this means for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, that's an interesting question. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have no idea how they're going to connect this back, but I do wonder, because it is Marvel and they're always looking for a way to not have a character actually die. I'm wondering if this is a way that they're using so they can pull Vision back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I do think they're having a little bit of a problem with major characters. They've got Black Panther and Captain Marvel right now. Ant-Man's great, but he's not really he's not one you can just throw into somebody else's movie and it's going to bring people over. So, the Vision was a very well respected and loved character. This way you can bring him back, and maybe they want to do more with this down the road as a TV series. So I don't know how it plays in the overall scheme of things, but I'll be honest, I don't care. Like, I just want to watch it for what it is, and then we'll see where it goes down the road. I know Marvel fans love that aspect of it. I don't want to have to watch something on TV and in the theater and keep going ping-ponging back and forth to understand what the hell is going on. I want to just enjoy stuff.
Fair enough. Vinny, do you have any theories about how this is going to connect to the MCU?
How much time do you have?
Well, as long as you want, and then we can just leave you to keep talking if you want.
I'll just be sitting here talking to myself. We'll release this episode in 2 weeks. No, but like I said earlier, with comics and when you bring in the multiverse, it's endless. I mean, they're literally making an animated show called What If, which is actually a run of comics where they do a one-off, like, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if what if Red Skull is Captain America? What if Peter Parker was the Punisher? What if this and that? So with comics, I mean, you have characters that are just about literally gods, big rage monsters, super soldiers. You can do whatever you want. So when you bring in universes where there's slight changes and variations, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And with the new Doctor Strange movie coming out, Multiverse of Madness, I think that the possibilities are literally limitless. Especially because now they have to incorporate the Fantastic Four and mutants. So if they really wanted, they could try to figure out a way to, like Aaron said, if this is like some kind of, even if it's a weird pocket dimension where they can pull Vision from, they can do that. If they want to visit other universes, or if the universes like collide somehow, like in, I think it's Battle World or something like that, where different Earths collide and they basically cherry pick superheroes. So you could do that to refill your roster from characters that you don't have anymore. Like Captain America's on the fence with recent news, but if you want a new Iron Man, if you want a new Scarlet Witch, if you it's going to be a different actor and it's going to be a slightly different version, but you could have that character brought back into your universe. So, sky's the limit, but that's also kind of dangerous. So hopefully they get some good writers.
This does have Doctor Strange written all over it, for sure, to a degree. This whole multiverse or parallel universes, da-da-da-da. I mean, so Doctor Strange could come into that. That would be kind of cool if he showed up in the show.
It's going to be great. That one and the new Thor movie are top of my list for most anticipated for Marvel movies coming out. Purely off name,
I think
too.
I think Cumberbatch could show up in this series.
I think he actually might, because they did and this is seriously just me making an assumption, but they did this like Twitter or video questionnaire thing from fans, and that they had a panel of the cast on there to address it. And for whatever reason, Benedict had like 2 different things where he was bringing the video to them. It could just be because he was available and wanted to help out, and, you know, that draws in attention and stuff. But it also could mean that he eventually down the road does have a spot in the show and makes a premiere here.
Or what if Luke Skywalker shows up in like the last episode? That could be great too.
I think that they're going to really start utilizing Scarlet Witch's power in terms of what they need done and how they want to do it, because she could quite literally do anything. I mean, there are going to be consequences and ramifications for it, but if they wanted to bring people back, they could bring people back. And
you think she'd bring her brother back?
I think that she probably would, because she's incredibly, you know, she loves her brother, her twin. So
as long as it's the MCU version of her brother. No shade to what's his name from American Horror Story, but I just like the MCU version better.
Well, I feel like the shade has been thrown.
Well, you know.
Yeah. He didn't call him by name, so as long as we don't name him, we're good.
He's not going to hear
that
this.
guy. Maybe he is. You don't know.
I mean, if he does,
Aaron
that's cool.
Taylor Johnson is much better. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was still fun in those movies, but
it was.
Who shall not be named.
That's my preference. So if they bring him back, I even said that because we were doing a rewatch of related movies, and I was like, man, you know, he did a good job. I liked his character. He was fun. Him and Hawkeye have a fun little rivalry.
He's only in one movie.
I know. Sad.
Fair enough.
Well, guys, that's going to conclude this first episode of our WandaVision AfterHO for episodes 1 and 2, but we will be back for the next one. And Aaron won't be here, apparently.
And yeah, you never know when I'll pop up. Sorry, this thing is running concurrently with the Blacklist, and I have to do that podcast too. So,
and he has no obligation to watch any of Marvel's stuff.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah, I'll watch it when I want to watch it, but I will pop on, and if I get free time, you never know which episode I might show up on. So there you go, fun surprise.
So you're just gonna surprise me and like make me randomly redo the format?
Why would it be? You have to redo anything? It's the same episode. That's
true. But I'd have to add your name in and stuff.
He's going to pop in like Doctor Strange.
I don't have to show up. Trust me. I can just come. I'll be back for the finale for sure. I'll guarantee that one.
So now you're obligated to finish the show because you just signed on for this last episode.
I'll do that. I'll do that for you, Amanda. That's the only reason I'm going to do it. I'll do it for you.
Too bad
but if
Johnny
it gets really
couldn't
bad, I'll just
commit.
John's, he's busy.
He's busy.
He's just doing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Florida stuff. They have sunshine there. They want
he
to
can go outside. He doesn't have to stay inside and watch Disney shows that may or may not connect to the Marvel Universe.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can find The Hollywood Outsider at the website, thehollywoodoutsider.com, on Twitter by Popcorn, on Instagram, The Hollywood Outsider. Make sure you subscribe to Patreon. Go to patreon.com/The Hollywood Outsider so that you can get these episodes ahead of time, as well as all of the other incredible things that come with being a Patreon supporter. And to those who already are, we love you. Thank you. And remember, the next time you watch WandaVision from your couch, buy popcorn. Sweet deal. You kitty cats ready?
I'm ready.
We're not going with that.